All right, what's up everybody? Today we are doing baby back ribs, and this is going to be a super simple how-to video for baby back ribs on a pellet smoker. Now obviously you can do this with any smoker you want, but this is going to be specifically a pellet smoker. I just want to give you a real nice, easy method to make delicious baby back ribs and show you how simple these are to do. But before we get into these, we're going to want to make a nice rub for them, so let's do that first. All right, so we are going to be making a homemade rub today. I really prefer this. You can always go out, buy a rub of your liking if you want, but I really enjoy making my own rubs and you get the flavors you're looking for. So today I'm going to show you a rub. It's got a few ingredients in it, but it is a really good rib rub. And we're going to start off with some salt, and this is actually sea salt, and some black pepper. Probably go around 50-50 with this. Next, we're going to go in with some garlic powder. I'd say half the amount as the salt, maybe a little less. And some paprika. You're going to want a good amount of the paprika. Adds a nice color. Now, for a basic rub, you can go with this. This would be perfect for some ribs, but I would highly suggest this next ingredient, which is some chili powder. That adds really good flavor. Now, again, you can stop there, but I'm going to show you a nice recipe for a rub here. Next, we're going to go in with a little bit of onion powder. It's powerful stuff, so don't add too much. And I like to add a little cayenne for spice, some mustard powder, and if you don't have this, that is perfectly fine to go without it. And last, I like to add a little oregano into my rub. Adds a nice little flavor. And that's going to be it. A lot of times you're going to see sugar in a rub, and that's fine if you want to do that. I've really stay away from the sugar just because we're going to be adding some sweet stuff later onto these ribs, so you don't really need it in the rub. And with a pellet smoker, it's not that big a deal, but with some of the direct heat cookers, that sugar has a tendency to burn. But there is our nice rub. And the amount of salt in there isn't that much compared to the volume of seasoning we have here, so we can go on a little heavier with this. So let's get this out of the way and we will get these ribs prepped. So like I said, these are baby back ribs. A lot of people are fans of the baby back rib because there's not as much fat on these, and it doesn't have the cartilage that you do with like a St. Louis or a spare rib. So when you eat them, they're a little more easy to eat, fall off the bone style. This is a big baby back rack. A lot of thick meat on there. So that's good. Now I just want to pat these off. Sometimes I'll rinse them, but patting them off is fine. Sometimes near the bones you get some bone fragments, so be sure to wipe that good. Now a lot of times baby back ribs don't need much trimming. I do see that these need a little bit of work. So we'll start down here. You can see it's kind of ripped up. And this last bone, there's no meat here on this end, so I'm going to go ahead and just cut this one right off. And probably just trim this off as well. So that looks good for that side. Let's flip it around. You can see these chunks of meat hanging off. You're just going to want to get rid of that. Save it in your pork pile. And so you can see these ribs have an extra piece of bone that was left on here. So I'm going to go ahead, find this last bone here. And it looks like I'm going to have to cut it right about there. And you're going to have to work around because there's usually two little pieces of bone in there. And then I like to just square this off. Looks pretty good there. Let's flip this over. Kind of worried about this falling off, but I'm going to leave it on. We're going to have some nice meaty ribs here. You can see that's a big chunk of the loin. Baby back ribs come from the loin section of the pig, so that's why you have that nice lean meat from the loin. Now, if you have watched any other rib videos, you'll notice that a lot of people will pull this membrane off, or they will even go ahead and score it. I say just leave it on here, save yourself the time. When these are cooked properly, this actually gets nice and crispy, and I can find it actually pleasant, and it's not a problem to eat. It's not chewy or anything like that. And another thing is this membrane does a great job of holding all the juice in these ribs. And with these baby back ribs, you're going to want to hold in as much juice as possible because, like I said, this is very lean meat, so it can dry out on you. I don't think we'll have an issue with this. So let's go ahead and get our rub. And you always want to start on this membrane side. Seasoning's not too important here, but you do want to get some seasoning on it. It's easier to get the edges with them flipped over like this. Now, if your seasoning is having trouble sticking, if your piece of meat is dry for some reason, go ahead, add a little bit of water. You can add mustard, really whatever you want, but it's not really necessary. Man, this is one thick rack of baby back ribs. Now on the top, you're probably going to want to go a little heavier, especially since this is a thicker cut. If you end up getting a thinner cut of baby back ribs, you could probably go a little lighter, but I'm going to go pretty heavy just because there's a lot of meat on these baby back ribs. Like I said before, salt ratio is pretty low, which allows us to go heavier with our rub. Also a great idea if you're worried about oversalting, don't put the salt in the rub. Salt the piece of meat first to your liking, then go ahead and add a rub with no salt in it. I will go that route sometimes, especially with ribs, because smaller rack of ribs you definitely can oversalt. So that looks pretty good like that. Just give it a nice pat, and that is a nice, beautiful rack of baby back ribs ready for the smoker. Super thick rack, so kind of excited about the amount of meat I got on these. But my pellet smoker is all warmed up. I'm using my Z-Grills pellet smoker. So let's go ahead, get these outside, get them cooking on the smoker. All right, so we are using the Z-Grills, like I said. Great pellet smoker if you're interested in one. Already warmed up, so we're just gonna grab our ribs, lay them right down on the smoker like so, and check those out. But let's get this closed up and let them smoke. We'll go inside and talk about time and temp. All right, so for temperature on the pellet smoker, I've got it at 225 degrees. That's a good temperature for some baby back ribs. If you've seen me do the St. Louis ribs on there, you know I do 250 just because there's a little more fat in there. But for a baby back, you want to do a nice low temperature, at least at first, at 225 degrees. We'll probably let them go for 3 hours like that. After 2 hours, I'm thinking since it is a thicker rack of baby back ribs, I may bump it up to 250. For you, 225 is fine. Don't worry about it for now. Unwrapped, just like that, for about 3 hours, and then we will go out and check them and see how they're coming along. There is a very good possibility I'm going to wrap these because with baby back ribs, I really like to wrap them. It speeds up the cooking process and makes them nice and tender, and you don't want them to dry out because there's not really much fat in there like I've been saying. So after 3 hours, we will go out and give them a check. So you don't have to wait. Let's go out there now, see how they're coming along. All right, guys, so it's been 3 hours with the ribs on the smoker. After 2 hours, I did turn the heat up to 250 degrees just because these are thicker ribs. If you have thinner ribs, you could probably leave it at 225, but check these things out. Those are looking really good. Let's get a temp check. So yeah, we're about 189, 190. It's kind of where you're looking for. 185 to 190 is the temps you want. And just feel around. You can see it's nice and tender. We're at 200 here on those thinner parts. That's actually a fatty part. Fat's going to read a little bit hotter. 191. So temperature wise, that's what you're looking for. You want somewhere between 185, 190 before you pull them off and wrap them. It's usually what I like. The reason for that is I really like to get a nice crispy bark on these ribs before I go ahead and decide to wrap them. Once you wrap them up, it's really going to soften them up, so you want to get a nice bark first. These are all set, so I'm going to take them off, bring them in, and we will get them wrapped up. All right, so we're going to be using aluminum foil. Aluminum foil. The reason I like the aluminum foil for this is because it really steams everything, makes them nice and tender, and softens that bark, which is what I'm looking for with these ribs. Now, if you've seen other rib videos, this is going to look familiar. Go down with some butter, then some honey. Again, this probably looks familiar, but this is all I do. Probably wondering, brown sugar, right? That's what most people use. It's not really necessary. You don't need that added sweetness. The honey is enough sweet, plus we're going to add the sauce later. You really don't need that brown sugar. With the brown sugar, you have to be careful with your heats because with the sugar it can burn. But check out these ribs. These look fantastic. See that membrane under there? It's nice and crispy. This is going to be fine. That's why I say leave the membrane on. We didn't lose any of that juice. Let's go ahead and put these ribs right down, meat side down onto that butter. And you're going to want 2 sheets of tin foil because most likely when you wrap this up, you're going to poke holes in it. And we don't want any of this liquid to come out of this tin foil. We want to make sure it's all in there nice and tight so these can steam up properly. So wrap that first set up nice and tight, and then just do the same with the second one. I'm also using heavy duty tin foil, commercial grade. That's what I would suggest. And I'm still using 2 sheets. And there we go. Now these are going back on the pellet smoker, meat side down. So that meat is going to sit in all that melted butter and honey. It's going to be delicious. Also at this time, I'd crank your heat up. If you were at 225, bump it to 275. I'm putting mine to 275 even though I was already running at 250. 275 is a perfect temperature for this. And like I said with the brown sugar, if you bump your temperature up during this, there is a chance that that sugar is going to get burnt, especially with a pellet grill. There's a lot of heat coming off that deflector plate in the bottom. So these are going back on. Then probably about an hour later, they will be finished. We're going to unwrap them, put some sauce on them, and throw them back on the smoker for a little bit to get that sauce set up on these ribs nicely. So I'm going to throw these back on the smoker. But while they're on the smoker, let me go ahead and show you a awesome homemade barbecue sauce recipe that you can use on these ribs. All right, so for this barbecue sauce, you just want to get a pot over some medium heat. First ingredient, same ingredient I use in basically every barbecue sauce, apple cider vinegar. We're not going to use as much because I'm making more of a traditional barbecue sauce, not really that mop sauce style that I usually make. Next is some ketchup. You can see this is a ketchup heavy barbecue sauce. Going in with a little Cholula's, some Worcestershire sauce, a little bit of honey, and then good ingredient for good barbecue sauce, molasses. Now if you don't have this, you can always just add some extra honey, or brown sugar even would work. If you want to make barbecue sauce, molasses is going to be something you want. We'll go ahead and give this a mix. And brown sugar, I believe, is white sugar just mixed with molasses. So that's why I said you could probably go in with the brown sugar if you want, but it'll be a little sweeter, which maybe you want a little sweeter. Now I want to go in with some of that rib seasoning. Let's just finish it off. Mix that up, and we want to get this up to a boil and let it boil for a little bit. Try and thicken this up some more. So I'm going to go ahead and let this boil for a little bit. And if you don't have one of these, it's like a camping stove. It's called the Grill Boss Portable Outdoor Stove. They're not that much money. They run off these little cans of butane. If you go camping, this is great. But if you want to do stuff like this outside, and this thing is super efficient. You can see how fast it heats up anything you're cooking. So I'd highly suggest this. I will leave a link to this down below in case anyone's interested in it. So I shut the heat off completely. And that's looking like a pretty good barbecue sauce to me. You can see it's got that dark color of traditional style barbecue sauces. So I'm pretty happy with that. And this is ready for the ribs. So let's go ahead. I think they're ready. We'll get them unwrapped, baste them with our sauce, throw them back on that smoker for a little bit. All right, so these ribs have been wrapped up for an hour on the smoker at 275. They should be all set. So let's get these unwrapped. And they are super hot. Should have got my glove liners. Oh, they are already super tender. I just tried to grab a bone and just wanted to pull right out of there. Okay, this was a bad idea. I need my glove liners. All right, got my glove liners, and conveniently the camera battery also died, so it worked out pretty well. So I'm gonna go ahead carefully, because these are very tender, get them out of this foil and go ahead and give them a look. Beautiful. And like I said, they're super tender. Go ahead and mix that barbecue sauce up that we've made. I'm just going to give these a beautiful coating of this barbecue sauce. You can see it's nice and thin, and there's still a bunch of that honey and butter mixture on there that this is going to mix with. Oh yeah, these are going to be some delicious meaty baby back ribs. I don't think I've had ribs this thick. Kind of concerned about cutting up this section here because I have a feeling it's going to kind of fall apart. So you want to put a good amount of this barbecue sauce on, but that looks pretty good like that. So I'm going to get these back on the smoker, leave it at 275 for probably just 20 minutes or so till the sauce sets up. Don't want it to cook off too much, so 20 minutes to a half an hour. Check at 15, see how they look. Maybe let them go 20. We'll see. But from my experience, I'm gonna go about 20 minutes on the smoker with this sauce. Then I will see you right back out here to give them a try. All right, so 20 minutes later, these ribs are done, and just check them out. They look absolutely delicious. They are super tender. Let me go ahead, slice a few ribs off, and we will give them a try. You have to be delicate because, yeah, these are tender. They might be a little overcooked just because of how tender they are. It depends how you like your rib, actually. If you're looking for that straight fall off the bone style of rib, these might be for you. If you want something with a little more bite, kind of what I prefer. These are a little overcooked, but yeah, you can see how that meat just wants to fall right off. Super tender, but either way, these are going to be good. So let me go ahead and give them a try, and you can see that just comes right off like that. So I'm going to give this a try. Hot. So good though. These are still nice and juicy. They didn't dry out. That's what I always worry about when they get this tender, but being such a thick cut of meat help keep these nice and juicy. And this is some delicious pork rib. Sauce and seasoning is perfect. It's not overpowering. It really lets you taste that pork. We can see how tender this is. Some people might say it's overcooked, but again, it's to your liking. To me, I'd say, yeah, it is a little overcooked, but still tastes absolutely fantastic. I haven't had a straight up fall off the bone like this kind of rib in a while. I'll tell you what, it is good. Now, I know plenty of people who like their ribs this way. Like I said, I usually like a little more bite to it, but I can see why they like this. It's almost like pulled pork on a bone. So good. I hope you guys enjoyed this video. If you did, make sure to give it a like. Leave a link to everything I like to use in my videos down in the description. If you're interested in anything, go check that out. If you're new to the channel, be sure to subscribe right over here. Now, that Z-Grill's pellet grill is great. I'm going to leave my review video to it over here, and I'll also leave another rib video down here for you to watch as well. But most importantly, get out there and smoke something good.